everyone! Give this video a thumbs up if you think I should style my hair like this more often. No, I actually look decent. Bro, I look like a lion. I look like a freaking lion. Also, everyone, the buzzing that you might hear in the background of the audio of this video is my air conditioner. I normally would turn it off when I'm filming, but today I cannot do it because it is way too hot. So please understand if the audio sounds kind of weird, that's why. Hey everyone, so earlier this year I crossed my 5-year anniversary of me having type 1 diabetes. For those of you who don't know, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition in which the body's pancreas no longer produces insulin. It's very different than type 2 diabetes, which is the type of diabetes most of you are probably familiar with. Because my body doesn't produce insulin, I have to give it to myself through daily injections. This condition requires daily and even hourly attention. So I wanted to give some tips to people who have type 1 diabetes on what I eat in a day to give you better clarity on how I manage my blood sugars, as well as hopefully help people who don't have type 1 to understand what contributes to blood sugar stability. I want to emphasize I'm not a doctor, I'm only speaking on what has worked for me and hope that this can give you some understanding about the condition and blood sugar management. I think that food is the most important tool for managing healthy blood sugars. In the past, I used to eat a lot of sugar, especially as a form of stress relief. I would eat processed and fried foods, unhealthy fats and oils, and a lot of sugar, and none of that is good for you. While I'm not perfect, I'm more strategic about my eating choices now and try to stick to a lower carb diet. The most important thing to know is that your blood sugar spikes are affected by how many carbs you eat and what kind of carbs they are. With people concerned with blood sugar management and with diabetics, there is a new dimension that is added to eating, and that is carb counting. So whenever you eat something, you have to calculate how many carbs is in this food and how will these carbs affect my body. So for example, if you eat a high carb, high fat food such as ice cream, it will take a lot longer to process than if you eat a fast acting healthy carb such as a fruit, which will be a lot quicker for your body to act on. As a diabetic, I've had to learn how many carbs does this food that I'm eating have and how long does it take to process it. And in this video, I will show you an example of what I eat in a typical day, the experience that I have with it, as well as the carb count for each of the foods that I ate. These carb counts are estimated, and I encourage you to count the carbs of the food that you are eating yourself, but hopefully this can provide some kind of helpful guideline for the ballpark in which you can look at. I calculate the amount of insulin that I give myself based on the amount of carbs that I'm eating, and in order to do that, I have to come up with my own personal insulin to carb ratio. This was created with the help of a doctor, and it takes time and a lot of experimentation, so I encourage you to speak to a doctor to figure out what your specific one may be. So recently I've been taking an online course to grow my skill set after losing my job earlier this year. My class starts early in the morning, so I've been waking up pretty early to make myself a cup of coffee first thing. I just got an iced coffee kit for my Nespresso machine and I really love it, especially during hot summer days like this. I add almond milk, which generally has a low carb count. Coffee is low on carbs and a necessary evil for my functioning at this point. I usually have about 3 of these coffees every morning. I find that having a small or a low carb breakfast helps to stabilize my blood sugars for the rest of the day, as the mornings are usually the time that my body is most sensitive to carbs. So the carb count for this meal, I can't even call it a meal because there's no food, is about 12 grams for 1 cup of almond milk. And the time for processing this is really quick, I would say within about 1 to 2 hours. Around midday, I have a lunch break. On this day, I was lazy and I made eggs with a pre-made hash brown and some toast with jam. I made the toast and hash brown crispy with a bit of butter and just let them turn golden brown. Dancing helps to make everything taste better, by the way. Even if it looks kind of unappealing here, I swear it tasted pretty good. I added a peach and I was drinking a vitamin C infused water, which has no carbs or sugar. I like having eggs for breakfast because having a start of protein helps my body stabilize blood sugar longer. So the carb count for this, the eggs are about 0 carbs. The hash brown, which I got from Trader Joe's, was about 15 grams of carbs. A slice of bread was 17 grams of carbs. The jam was about 8 grams. A peach was 14 grams for a grand total of 54 grams. And this whole meal took a little longer to process, I think because the hash brown was technically fried, which isn't great, and took probably about 2 to 3 hours total. Midway through the afternoon, I like to have a little snack. On this day, I had popcorn and some gooseberries and a carbonated water. So the carb count for this, the popcorn is about 15 grams for 2 cups. Gooseberries was 10 grams. Water is always 0, which leads to a total of 25 grams of carbs for this snack. Popcorn is pretty light and easy to process, and gooseberries are fast-acting carbs, so this only took like 1 to 2 hours to process total. Finally, the last thing I ate at the end of this day was around 6 p.m. when I ate dinner. One of my favorite meals to make is salmon, and on this day I decided to make it with Brussels sprouts. I added some salt, pepper, garlic, and butter and baked it in the oven for about 20 minutes. I think it came out pretty good. It's a pretty simple meal that I like to have because it tastes good and it takes not a lot of time to make. And I added another peach to it just to have some more fruit. Salmon is also a pretty high protein food. It does have fats in it, but the fats that are present in salmon are healthy, so it doesn't take too long to process. So there were 0 grams of carbs in salmon. In the Brussels sprouts, there was about 16 grams for 2 cups of Brussels sprouts, which is about what I had at the end. For the peach, it was about 14 grams again. And then after dinner, I decided I wanted to have a dessert of frozen chocolate-covered strawberries, which I like to have as a healthy alternative that still feels kind of sugary. And 1 cup of these was about 15 grams of carbs. So in total for my dinner, I had 45 grams of carbs. And because the salmon had healthy fats and healthy protein, the Brussels sprouts, the peach, and the chocolate strawberries mostly had healthy carbs. This took about 1 to 2 hours to process and was really easy for my body to act on.
Whenever I eat salmon, Yuki always tries to take some from me. You want some, buddy? Yeah?
I try not to have any snacks after dinner because they can lead to nighttime sugar spikes, and that can make you more tired the next day and just make your blood sugar overall less stable. So that was the last food that I had for the day, and in total on this day I had 124 grams of carbs. One calculation I didn't have in this day, which you should account for, is diabetic sugar. Thankfully on this day my blood sugar was pretty stable, but as a diabetic you need to make sure that you have some kind of fast-acting carb, which usually is sugar, on you at all times. If your blood sugar gets too low, my doctor recommended to have about 15 grams of fast-acting sugar to get you out of a low blood sugar spell. But if your blood sugar is very low, you may need more than 15 grams of carbs. So it's very important to have some kind of sugar with you at all times. My choice is gummies because they taste good and they act quickly, but make sure to have whatever is best for you on you. Most days I do have to eat gummies at some point, whether I want to or not, just to keep my sugars from getting too low. When a type 1 diabetic eats food, the most important thing to know is the carb count of each food. Non-diabetics could benefit from this as well because it does lead to understanding the foods that you put in your body and how they affect you. Every food has a different carb count and a different amount of time to process. So for example, 1 cup of ice cream might have 40 grams of carbs, but because ice cream has high fat, the high fat makes those 40 grams of carbs take longer to process, and for my body it takes a minimum of 3 hours to act on. Generally, a healthy amount of time is about an hour to 2 for me. Healthier carbs, such as those in fruit, are quicker acting and can help your blood sugar spike quickly and then go down sooner. But I do encourage you to research the carb count of all the foods that you eat and look on the nutrition labels of the packages of food that you decide to buy. Everyone has a different insulin to carb ratio, and I also recommend that you speak to a doctor and a trained nutritionist on figuring out what those are for your specific body, because everyone has a different calculation. One thing I did not speak about, but cannot overemphasize enough, is the importance of exercising. I exercise about 5 times a week. I've been doing that every week since October of 2016, and I credit that so much to stabilizing my blood sugar just as much as I do with eating habits. Exercising helps my body stabilize their blood sugar so the spikes aren't as high and don't last so long. If you have a difficult time exercising or getting yourself to feel motivated, just try like dancing or doing something fun, walking around your neighborhood and listening to music, walking around talking with friends from a social distance. Just whatever you can do to get your body moving. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe down below. If you think this could help someone with managing diabetes or just managing blood sugar and health in general, feel free to send it to them. I hope this video helped you understand the correlation between carb counting and blood sugar stability and how that can maybe benefit you by changing your eating habits to have a lower carb count. I hope this also shows you the daily challenges that a type 1 diabetic has. What I didn't show in this video but also deserves to get some recognition is there are certain times where you need to eat more versus eat less. If you have very high blood sugar that's above 250, it's not a good idea to eat high carbs of anything until it gets lower. But if you have very low blood sugar, it's probably necessary to eat immediately, even if you're not hungry. And these are additional challenges that type 1 diabetics face that not many people understand, and that is important for those within the community to know. I've had this condition for 5 years. I can calculate carbs. I can figure out when is the best time to eat and how much, and the processing time for each of those foods fairly quickly now. But those are things that you learn over time. It's not something that you can understand within a couple months. It did take me those 5 years to learn. And what is frustrating about this is that it's different from person to person. So what worked for me might not work as well for you. So I do encourage you to experiment and see if maybe some of the things I said help you, and maybe they don't work the same and you need to experiment with that particular food item more. When I first was diagnosed with type 1, over 5 years ago now, I thought that this illness would be completely unmanageable, and it does get better. It becomes a second nature habit that you learn how to calculate foods, you learn how to calculate insulin, you learn how to understand what your body needs at what time, and it can be overwhelming if you're just starting out to know, like, where do I start in this process? Like, this is so much to understand, and I just encourage you to know what you need to know and just learn a little bit every day, because it does get easier and it does become manageable. It just takes some time and effort. If you're struggling, if you have any questions, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, but if you have some questions that you need help with, I'm here. Feel free to ask me and I can send you resources that I've found that have helped me. Thank you guys so much again. Please continue to stay safe through all of the craziness in this world, and I will see you next time. Bye. Now I am going to spend the next few hours fanning myself with this notebook. It is so freaking hot.